Today's guest is a man whose wisdom runs deep and whose commitment to recovery has shaped hundreds of lives over the past 2 decades. We're honored to welcome Todd Haskell, Administrative Director and Vice President at Dunklin Memorial Church in Okeechobee, Florida. Todd has served faithfully at Dunklin for over 20 years, leading with humility and purpose. And he oversees their powerful servant leaders training program as well, a cornerstone of their long-term recovery model. His approach blends discipleship, structure, and heart-driven leadership in a way that stood the test of time. And Dunklin is rooted in a rural setting, and Todd brings a unique perspective that contrasts with our more urban approach here in Orlando at Fresh Start. But today's conversation is all about bridging those differences, learning from each other, sharpening our mission, and strengthening the broader recovery community. We're excited to collaborate with Todd and his team and to explore how 2 ministries, 1 country, 1 city, can walk in unity toward the same goal, lifelong transformation and freedom. This is going to be a good one, so pull up a chair and join us because the best conversations happen around the kitchen table. Tell me a little bit about your role. You are Administrative Director and Vice President, but that wasn't where you began. Tell me a little bit about your plan in your program in Dunklin.
Sure. I definitely did not begin there.
Yeah.
I began as a man in the program, came from Houston, Texas, to Dunklin, a cocaine addict, alcoholic, 28 years old, never married, no kids, without a job, hopeless, didn't know where life was going. But I knew I needed help. I was raised into church, so I was open to what Dunklin had to offer. Yeah. And I thought Florida sounded like a great place to go for rehab. So obviously I finished the program. I stayed through the years of training there. And throughout that time, the Lord began to show that there was more of a purpose for why I ever went to Dunklin. And I gradually began to believe it. Didn't believe it right off the first time I heard it and thought it. I didn't really feel worthy, capable. But through all kinds of situations that I was put in and a lot of the support from the leadership there at the time, Brother Mickey and Brother Hugh Murrow and even Nick Reynolds, they saw something in me that I didn't see. And they were constantly speaking that into me. And they put me in positions where I had to serve in different areas that I didn't think I was even capable of. And so I actually started, while I was in SLT, I finished that, and I started working with Nick Reynolds. He, as kind of an assistant. At the time, he was like the administrator, working with Hugh as the executive director. And so I started assisting Nick in different areas of the administration. Right. And then when I finished SLT, Brother Mickey knew I was going to stay on longer, and he asked me to come and just kind of work with him for a period of time, which was probably the best year of my life, a couple of years. Wow. And so I was down with him in his office and never sure what that day was going to look like. It was just whatever he had on his agenda, and we did it. And I went everywhere with him, did everything with him, whatever he needed. And that was years of just gleaming wisdom and counsel and just a great example for me. So I got to experience him for quite a while, and then eventually I got brought back over to the administrative side of the ministry, and just gradually the roles increased, responsibilities increased, more things were added on. Another thing I do, I kind of oversee a lot of our connections with other programs and ministries, and particularly ones internationally. And so I ended up going down to visit a ministry in Costa Rica that was running using the Dunklin program, and went down there with Brother Mickey and some of the other elders of the camp, and I went to go just to be the videographer.
Is that right?
Yeah. And they're sitting in a meeting, and basically this ministry was struggling. There was one gentleman that pretty much financially sustained the program, and his business was failing. And so they wanted help. They wanted someone to come take over the ministry. They didn't want to do it anymore. And Dunklin wasn't prepared or equipped to do that, but we thought we could try to help them for some time, do what we could. And so Brother Mickey said, we need someone to come down here periodically and spend a few weeks every month. And I just was sitting in the back of a meeting that I wasn't really partaking in. Yeah. And I just spoke up and said, it's me.
Is
I'll
that
do
right?
it. And they're like, looked at me and they're like, yeah, you know what? You'll do great.
Wow.
And that proceeded where I would go down to Costa Rica and I'd bring a couple other men with me. And I'd spend 2 weeks there, then 2 weeks back at Dunklin, 2 weeks down in Costa Rica. And I did that for about 9 months. So that was a great experience of training
Right.
and stepping into roles that I had no idea what I was doing down there.
Right.
And but again, these men trusted me.
Yeah.
They saw something, and so that was always, I valued that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, you start off as an addict in the program, and then all of a sudden things start to open up. And I'm sure you didn't plan it happening that way, but do you feel like there was a real presence of God throughout each of these decisions, and that somehow you were learning to listen to Him? I would think.
yeah, definitely. I can think back at many times where it definitely was not my plan.
Yeah.
My plan looked much different.
Yeah.
And when my plan got changed, normally if I didn't get what I wanted, I would buck and I'd be mad, I'd be upset, throw a little fit. But it was different, and that's how I knew it was the Lord, because my plans completely got derailed, but yet I had this sense of peace.
Yeah.
I was okay with it. I was actually like excited and happy about the future, and I hadn't felt that way in a long time, in the majority of my life.
Wow.
So I knew it was different.
Yeah. Well, you've been now in the addiction ministry for over, 2 decades. So how have you seen it evolve? From 20 years ago? Because the same guys, or the guys that came in your doors 20 years ago, are not the same guys that are coming in today. I would, if I'm comparing to our ministry here at Fresh Start.
Oh, yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It is a different breed of drug addict men that we receive than when I was going in the program in 2001.
Right.
It seems like they're just a little bit softer.
The guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Men are softer.
Yeah. Yeah.
No one wants to be offended. Nobody wants to be told anything that goes against who they are and what they want to do and what they believe.
Right.
And it's just different. So when we challenge, those things get challenged in the program, and some of our belief systems, some of our attitudes, before, men usually would respond to that a little bit better. Now, we still do those same challenges, but it's a different approach.
Yeah.
Because we want them to get it. We don't want to just force it, but it's a whole new approach. They need more time. The program is actually longer now, in sense as far as not longer in time, but when I went in the program, there was only 4 classes. Now there's 6.
Yeah.
Just to slow them down as they move through the program.
Yeah.
They get a little bit more time in different classes. Just to kind of let it soak in a little bit.
I was in my first ministry years ago. The senior pastor there always talked about a closed fist, open hand. These were the closed fist was the non-negotiables. These are the things, our core structures, and then these open hand is more of the kind of opinions that we get caught up in. That sometimes we think they're scripturally based, but they're really our preference, because I don't think anywhere in the Bible it says the carpet needs to be blue, or the volume should be, and the band should be this loud. But here, those core values, you've had to have core values to keep that structure kind of the same, to be as successful as you guys. What are those core structures? You're talking about changing it a little bit, but still keeping the main program.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what that closed fist is all about.
Okay. For sure, the number one main thing is that our program will always revolve around the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
The broken body, the shed blood. That's the center. That is the program. That will never change.
Yeah.
No matter what comes our way, what people say, what we have to do, that won't stop.
Yep.
That's the whole program.
Yep.
So that's number one. There's been other things, such as we'll always work with men regardless of their financial ability.
Right.
We won't turn somebody away because they don't have the finances to pay for the program fee. And I think probably another very important thing is just always keeping the men first. Yeah. It's real easy to there's so many things that go on. And in Dunklin, we have a lot of different types of ministries and activities going on all the time. And the work industries and different things that you can really steal the focus and the intention. But if the men weren't there, if there was no, we call it a regeneration program.
Right.
If that didn't exist, Dunklin wouldn't exist. Nothing else there. That is the core. That's the center.
Yeah, we are very similar in all of that. I mean, that the belief of it's centered around the relationship with Christ, and that you cannot do this alone. And you are, I mean, you're near Lake Okeechobee. What is it officially? What's your official town? Is it Okeechobee?
Our mailing address, the city is Okeechobee, but we're not in any city limits.
Okay.
We're in western Martin County.
Yeah.
No city limits whatsoever.
You're in the middle of Egypt, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you were out there. And so, we're here 150 yards, we're from a main 4-lane highway. You, on the other hand, are a little bit more rural where we're urban. Where do you see, what challenges has that brought with you as you compare it to the other programs that you're associated with that are maybe a little bit more cityfied, if you will?
Yeah. I think the biggest challenge is just being that it's a good 20-minute drive just to get to a grocery store, a gas station, anything like that. So just the expense of fuel and just the amount of time you spend every time you need to go to Home Depot to get something and to get supplies. I mean, it's a trip.
Yeah.
So that's the main disadvantage, I would say. I think it's been primarily advantage to being where we're at.
Yeah.
One thing, it makes the men think a little bit when they want to leave the program.
Yeah.
And that's every man that comes in the program at some point wants to leave the program. And they've got to work through this, okay, am I going to make a good decision or a bad decision? Right. And there are men that will walk off our property and they know that it's a very long, dark road filled with all kinds of wildlife and gators, and there's no shoulders, there's no sidewalks. It's a dangerous road to walk. And they know that, and they know that it's and some will still do it, but not that many.
Yeah.
Most will say, okay, I want to call somebody to come pick me up.
Right.
But that gives us the time, that gives us time to sit down and, at least give them an opportunity to slow down. Why are you making this decision? I think that's a huge advantage because it's not easy just to walk out and get to a payphone or get to ask, for somebody to borrow a cell phone or to get to a store.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah.
You've been doing this a long time. Well, how do you evaluate a man when he comes in the program? Can you sense that this guy's going to really succeed in this program, or that this guy's going to struggle? And what are those characteristics and traits?
Yeah. I do sometimes think I can sense it, and sometimes I'm right, but a lot of times I've been wrong.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah.
There are some guys that I've been blown away with, shocked.
Yeah.
But that just shows the power of God, because it is nothing short of a miracle. But they're all miracles.
Yeah.
But some do seem a little bit bigger. But there are some men that you can tell that have something that just what's inside, that they truly were broken, that they are done running. They really surrendered, and they want their life to be different.
Yeah.
And other guys you see that they're kind of coming in, shucking and jiving, and they don't seem too serious. They're playing games, but usually within probably the first month or 2 months, they'll make a decision. Either they're going to go all in and work the program, or they'll make a decision and run.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that we're real similar with that. It's just interesting to see, you can kind of tell. I like to watch these guys when you can sense they just had a breakthrough where they are now here for themselves and not for everybody else.
Right.
That's either mandating them or forcing them to be here. And what a great transition and morph that is to see. And when you keep those core values there, do you think that formula could, if you planted another program somewhere else, as long as those core values were there, do you feel that would be successful in any country, any location, as long as you keep that and then adapt everything around the environment?
Yeah, I think so. It's always be more challenging and you're starting something new.
Yeah.
That's the reason why we had those core values is because of Brother Mickey taught them to us, because one of his biggest regrets was that he put so much before his family.
Yeah.
To build a ministry up in the beginnings are tough. It takes a lot of sacrifice. The whole family sacrificed.
Sure.
And it takes so much time. And so he taught us from what his regrets, really, the lessons he learned, and encouraged us to make sure that we did not put our families after the ministry.
Yeah, that's awesome. Speaking of families, you have a wife and you have 2 kids, right? A boy and a girl.
That's right.
How do they like what you do, and especially your wife? How does she support you, and in what way?
Yeah, that was one of the biggest fears I had as a single man at Dunklin, that what woman is going to want to come out here in the middle of nowhere in Okeechobee, Florida, and live in this drug program, right? It sounds like it's a kind of a funny little place. How's this going to happen? Yeah. So, but, I met my wife. She lived in Boca Raton, a few miles from the beach, the city, much different world.
It is.
But her father, who was a missionary, he was very familiar with Dunklin.
Wow.
And when she told him, I'm dating this guy, we met on eharmony.com.
Did you really?
Yeah. And she mentioned, I'm dating this guy. He works this place called Dunklin. And he said, that's the man you're going to marry. It's a Dunklin right? Man, that's the man you're going to marry. So the rest is history. She loves it. And she's been a stay-at-home mom, homeschooled our kids. My son just went into high school at 10th grade. We're still homeschooling our daughter. She's just finished her freshman year. And
oh, wow.
But she supports me in a lot of ways. She's a receptionist at times in the office. She's involved in, the nursery, the children's ministry, whatever she can do. But she loves it out there.
That's awesome. What's your approach on really partnering with constituents, folks that are supporting the ministry, and what are some of the ways that some of the best practices that you've found that really reaches out to that community and brings them into the story, helps them understand whether they've had a relationship with addiction or not? How do you get them to be a part of your story, to say, yeah, I believe in this, I want to be a part of it?
I would say, we do have a monthly newsletter called The Campfire.
Yeah, I've seen that's great.
Yeah, and that's something that Brother Mickey started, has always done. And Nick Reynolds now, he writes that and puts that out. And that's been a huge way just to keep in contact with what's going on in the ministry, to let people know what we have going on, what to be praying for, the things that have happened, whether it's graduations or different events. I think people getting that and seeing it, it keeps them connected.
Yeah, I bet. That's good. I love the fact, and props to you for being willing to bring your guys here. You've just brought, we have 12?
Counting myself, yes.
12 of you. So you've brought 10 guys that are in your SLT, your Servant Leader Training Program. And they're learning just different programs that you've gone to another program as well, just to see best practices and get a chance to get a feel for that. First of all, I absolutely love that. I love the fact that, this is not something that you keep close to the vest. You're so open and willing to say, hey, this is what works for us. This is what... Right. Talk about mission-minded, man. That's what it's all about. It's about keeping the ministry in front, and that's the most important thing. And I feel that completely with Dunklin. A lot of the things that we do are based on, your practices that you've developed. We've been 39 years, and but you 63 years. A lot of the ideas and concepts, and then we've adapted it to have come from you, but we've adapted it to our environment, to our when in Rome kind of thing. Yeah. And so I greatly appreciate that factor, that we can collaborate and keep Christ the center of this, and to say, how do we work together as a world to attack this addiction epidemic? What are some of the things that, you've been doing this for over 20 years. What are some of the pieces of advice that you can give to other programs to lean on people that are going through the same thing?
Right.
How do we collaborate better?
Yeah. I think one way, we just got to be able to communicate. We've got to have times where we come together, like we do have our leadership conference every year. That definitely brings people together, and to share and see where people are at, to share what their struggles are. Because somebody that has got a struggle, there's all these ministries all together in one place. Someone's already been through that struggle.
Yeah, right.
So we don't have to reinvent the wheels. somebody's already did that.
Yeah.
So we can learn from one another. The reason why I bring these guys out on to see these other ministries, because Dunklin has its way, because it works at Dunklin, right? But there's more than one way to do everything that we do.
Yeah.
And nothing we do is perfect.
Right.
It's just right for Dunklin.
Yeah.
It's
right.
not the best way. It's not the perfect way. It's just our way.
Right.
And when I have noticed men that have left the Dunklin training program, because we have more men in training than we could ever absorb under our leadership. So God's either going to call them out somewhere else, right? And they've gone to other programs, and all those other programs have said, we're loving your guys, but it's kind of hard to get the Dunklin out of them. They're constantly saying, well, at Dunklin, we did it this way. Well, at Dunklin, we did it that way. And so that's kind of what spurred my whole idea of they need to go around and see and experience step out of the Dunklin box. That's all they know, and realize there's other ways to do the exact same thing that fits different cultures of programs. Every program's got its own little culture.
Yeah.
Dunklin has a culture.
Yeah.
Right? I'm sure Fresh Start Ministries has a culture.
It does, yeah.
Everyone does, and it's, I think God's behind all that.
Yeah.
And he creates that, and it's good.
I have great appreciation for that, man, because I just think that's the way we need to approach ministry. Even churches out there that are so, I've been an executive pastor or a worship pastor at many churches for many years. And I've always been concerned. Fortunately, I've never been at a church where it hasn't been, listen, if this isn't the right fit for you, let me find some place where you can, serve and use your gifts. I'll help you. I'll make the phone call, right. Because God wants you to serve. It might not be here, but it might be somewhere else. And I greatly appreciate that attitude of just saying, this is kingdom driven, right? Yeah. We're all brothers and sisters if we're believers and followers. And so we need to really focus on that. And I really appreciate that mentality. If you've got somebody listening, which there is somebody listening right now that's going, okay, Todd, you've been in this for 20 years, and I'm struggling with this. I need to know, what's the hardest step for me? How do I overcome that first step of making the phone call to get into a program, to get help? Do I have to first recognize it within myself? Do I need the intervention? What is it that do I need to read the right book? Yeah. What is it that I need to motivate me to get the help that I need?
Yeah, I think that, that answer is going to be different for everybody. Every situation is different. But what we look for when the intake calls are coming in, we're looking for somebody that's serious and sincere. You have to be at a spot. You have to want to look. You got to look at your life and say, is this how I want this to go? Yeah. And am I going to do something about it, or am I just going to keep this being the same way, doing the same thing, and expecting the same different results for it? Yeah. And it's just making that decision. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to know how it's going to work. You just have to know that you're done living the way you're living, hurting the people around you that you're hurting, and you just take the one step. And each day it's another step. A lot of people get too caught up when they hear the program's 10 months long, or it's all the way out in Okeechobee, and I don't get to make any money. And they look at all the different parameters that our program consists of. And we're like, you know what? Listen, don't worry about all that right now. Just, do you need help? Let's just focus on that. Yeah. Right? You don't have to absorb all that. And then that's when the guys first come in. It takes a while to absorb and receive, and accept. Yeah. And we call it when the guy finally does, he's landed. But that landing period could be a week. It could be 4 weeks. It could be 6 weeks for some people before they wake up and they realize, I'm at this place in Okeechobee, and all right, okay, I'm here. Yeah. And I accept it.
They start to embrace it, yeah.
Yeah, but it's different for each man.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, if typically as we sit around the kitchen table, I've had a chance to travel quite a bit internationally, and I was always fascinated by when I would go to a restaurant and a quick serve, it's takeout. They say, is this for here? Or they say takeaway. So in our kitchen vernacular here, what's the takeaway here? If you have people that are listening, first of all, for looking for a home for to help the drug addiction, or even the family member that is struggling with codependency,
Right.
What can we put up in a nice box and give them to take away?
Yeah. Well, number one, don't stop praying
Oh,
for the person in addiction.
that's awesome.
That's the number one thing you can be doing, because you definitely want to be led by the Lord. He needs to be involved in it,
Yeah.
you know, and the timing, his timing. So pray. It takes tough love. If you're the parent, if you're the wife, you know, you're going to have to make a decision. It's yourself. The addict has to make a decision. You know, there's a problem, but so does the wife, the mom, the dad. They can't run their own programs. And so they have to decide as well. You know, they can't spend all their mental energy on the addict, and that's what the addict does. He drains everybody around them, and all the mental energy is focused on a problem, and there's no solution in that. So I would just encourage them to pray, get help, ask for help through their church, through people they know. Unfortunately, addiction is a pandemic. And I guarantee you that there's somebody you work with, someone in your family. Addiction touches everybody these days. Everybody knows somebody that knows someone that struggled with addiction. And potentially they also know somebody that has been successful in coming out of addiction and recovery, and how they did it and where they went, you know.
That's a great answer. That's a good one to end on. Listen, I can't thank you enough for being a part of this, for bringing your guys here to Fresh Start, and the wisdom that you shared and the conversations that we've had so far. I'm looking forward to more connection with
Definitely.
you and really gleaning your experience. And I appreciate your open mind and your open heart to really keep the kingdom first. And together, you know, maybe we can help, you know, reach more people to overcome this pandemic, because it certainly is out there. But thank you. Listen, I wish you great travels back home as well,
Thank
man.
you.
I really appreciate you being part of
Thanks
this.
for having me. It's been a pleasure. It's been a great day visiting
Good.
here and seeing everything, and it's been good.
Good. Safe travels, and thanks again. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe, like, and share it on YouTube or Facebook. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll know when our next episode drops. We'd also love to hear from you. So drop your questions or comments below, and we'll do our best to address them in the future episodes.